Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Wilson.
And I'm Jaden McKinley.
And you're listening to Diesel Performance Podcast. Jaden, returning to the show today. You've been with us a few times before to talk a little bit about sled pulling. I heard you got to get out in the old Ford Powerstroke there again this weekend.
Yeah, we got to bust her out right here in our hometown at McHenry County Fair in Woodstock.
Nice. All right. Give our listeners a little refresher on this truck.
So it's our shop. Well, not really a shop truck. It's one of our R&D trucks. It's a 17 F350 Powerstroke. It's got the Carly suspension on it, built trans, Stealth 64, S&B intake, and Whirly traction bars.
Nice. So this truck has competed at King of the Streets in the emissions equipped portion, which admittedly was only against one other truck. But it did get to go out and have some fun. You've sled pulled with it a handful of times before.
Yep.
And we sponsor a Stealth Series shootout with the local sled pulling club by us, ISP, Illini State Pullers. Good group of guys. We're always happy to get out there in the work stock class. Man, this Woodstock pull is usually one of the smallest pulls of the year for the work stock class. It doesn't generally bring in a ton of trucks, at least not in the last few years. But my understanding is that was not the case yesterday.
No, not at all. And yeah, I would agree with you. Most of the time, McHenry County is kind of lackluster. I know they usually do split it up. Like sometimes they have like an early set of polls and there's a later set of polls.
Yeah.
So maybe it's because I'm not usually at the early set that I don't see the whole thing. But yeah, they did everything right away on a Sunday morning, bright and early. And yeah, I think the guy said there was 190 hooks.
190 hooks.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen more than like 90. So.
Oh my goodness! And that just one sled out there? Did they have two sleds?
Luckily there was two, or I don't think we would have got out there until midnight.
All right, so walk us through your day. What was it like?
Well, rough start to the morning, but got out here, got the truck up because I drive the truck to the event.
Yeah.
So we had our the LB7 go out, which was trailered and everything. So I stopped here in the morning, helped him make sure he was loaded up, ready to go, and I just jumped in the truck and drove there, pulled up, expecting it to be completely dead because it seemed like there was a little weirdness on the time because the schedule originally said 4:30, and then come to find out it's 10 a.m. Big difference on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, no kidding.
So yeah, we were like, "There's no way no one's gonna show up because they switched the schedule last minute." We pull in the parking lot, and we're like, "Holy cow, it's a madhouse!" So yeah, we roll in and just the usual: pull in, jack up the back of the truck, throw my axle stops in, dump the front tire pressure, and sit there and wait for. I think it was about 4 hours between driver's meeting and by the time I actually made it up to the track.
Oh my God. Yeah, that could make for a long day, man. Sitting around for 4 to 6 hours, waiting to go out and sled pull for what, 25 seconds out on the track, right?
If it was that, I think I got lucky.
Now, let's talk about tracks a little bit. So, we've seen up here in the Midwest, we get some really nice tracks. I know I've been out to places where the clay is just right and it's sticky, but it's not sliding all over the place. The guys who are doing the prep really know how to pack it down and scrape off that top layer, clean it up really, really nice. McHenry County, we've always found that we have a good crew, a good ground crew out there working with maybe the worst dirt in the area.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's dirt.
We've called it the sand pit before. It could be a tougher track, especially later in the day. It's one of those tracks we kind of see it generally fade away as the night goes on.
Yeah. So
the more and more pulls, when you're dealing with that dry of dirt and that kind of rock-filled, almost sediment, we run into some tough spots. And usually we find a couple of low points or a dip in the track or anything like that. What was it like last night going out there looking at it?
So it's funny that you bring that up because when I got there, I actually looked at the track and was pretty optimistic. I was even telling Jake, who brought the LB7 out there, I was like, "Hey, track looks pretty good today." But come to find out, we're the last class of the night, and me personally was the very last hook of the night. So by the time we got out there, it was completely different than it looked in the morning. And I don't know what happened because, like, obviously between each run they have, the packers come by the little cultivator with sprays a little bit of water down, but they would run the water truck like every hour because it needed it. It was super dry out there. And then after about noon, 1 o'clock, water truck was just gone. I'm like, I don't know if they only bought one tank of water for the day.
Oh, no.
But they weren't really spraying it down. So after that point, you could really just see guys having harder time getting out of the hole. Right around the 150, 200 mark, you'd hear the RPM skyrocket from guys losing the tires.
Yep.
So, I mean, it could be. Honestly, I thought it was better than Kane.
Okay.
Kane's track was really rough for me.
Kane County. Now, we haven't been pulling up at ISP for a long time with Kane County, so I think the only time we've gone to Kane was maybe the first time was last year or the year before.
Yeah.
So 2 or 3 visits out there. Oh, man, I always remember their track is set up in kind of an awkward spot where if you were to shoot through it, generally at the end of a sled pull track, they like to leave a lot of open space or maybe run you into a cornfield field or a bean field. Because God forbid you break away or you get a runaway situation, you're going to run into somewhere safe. Kane, when I've been there, there's generally a giant dirt mound and then an entrance to the fair right on the other side of that dirt mound. So if you were crazy enough or something went horrible enough to launch you through the dirt mound, you got a pretty good potential at mowing over some kids or some grandmas.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's not like it's a wall either. It's a dirt mound, so that can turn into a ramp pretty easily. You got enough speed. And us stock guys, we don't run tethers. So, I mean, if we do break away, you better be quick because
better be on those brakes.
Yeah, that motor's going to still be cooking.
Okay. Track conditions a little bit better than you expected, but man, they do have a tendency to go away over the night at that track there.
Yeah, Boone is where I'm hoping for Boone because Boone generally they got a really nice clay base over there, and generally their track's usually really good. So I'm hoping for Boone to be the best yet.
So Boone's the third leg of the shootout. What we do is we have guys go out to all 3 events, Kane County, McHenry County, and Boone County Fairgrounds. ISP does 3 sled pulls with them, pretty much back-to-back. I think there's a week or 2 gap there.
Yeah, I think just tomorrow in Carroll County and Milledgeville.
Yeah, Milledgeville. Which are a cruise for us. Those are quite a ways out.
Yeah.
So we've learned that, hey, some of that farther stuff we don't have to go, right?
Yeah.
We're not in any sort of points race.
Just to do a 30-second drag is,
It's tough. It's tough because you
5
do
hours
end
of
up out
driving.
there and like a weeknight in Milledgeville, work stock is definitely the last class.
100%.
So you're going to be sticking around there for a late night.
Yeah, so like, all right, I got out of here at 10 o'clock, and now I got a 2.5-hour drive home.
Yeah.
And I work in the morning.
Right. Well, that's the thing, too, is this is all like volunteer time. So it's all like, oh, no, I'm doing this for fun. It can't impact my work negatively.
Yeah.
So,
otherwise, I probably won't get to do it for fun anymore.
Now, Boone County, we generally have the best turnout at Boone County.
Yeah.
Depending on the day and the night and all those little variables that go into it. But generally, Boone County, we get a really good turnout. It's an awesome stadium. I really like their bleacher setup and their grandstand and everything is really, really nice. And the fair's a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more spread out. So, if you're going to go there and go kick around and spend some money on some bad stuff, it's a good idea.
Oh, yeah. I think they probably got the best variety out of the fairs in our local area. I'd say it's probably the biggest, nicest fair of them all.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. And it's not too far away, which is always a good handle on it. All right, so we're going out in the work stock class. What are some tips you would give to a guy who maybe is looking at a similar situation to you? What are you planning on doing different in Boone County than what you did in McHenry County?
That's a good question. Kane really kind of threw me off because we're going with like a whole different, like I think I said on the last one, we're going for a different gear start, a different like just out of the hole strategy, which then Kane's track completely threw that plan in the dirt.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, we're going to McHenry. McHenry's is generally a little bit better. I'm like, so let's retry again. And then I get there, track looks great. All right, I'm going to run through my head kind of how I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to go for a 3rd gear start and try and, get in the hero gear 4th and drag it as far as I can. But then as I kept seeing guys having harder and harder time getting out of the hole, I mean, there was a couple guys that they just sunk immediately. They didn't even budge the sled and just sunk right into the ground. It's like, ooh. And actually, the right before me, that's the truck right before me, he did that. And then the guy starts waving me up, and I'm like, the guy just put 4 massive fucking holes in the ground. You want me to go start in those holes? And I'm like, whatever. And the guy waves me out, so I start to line up a track, and then finally I see the tractor coming down, and he's like, no, back out. I'm like, well, thank you, because you put me in a massive disadvantage if I got to start in someone else's ruts.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, as I got out there, I was like, you know what? And coming out of the hole, I could feel the tires go right away, and I'm like, abandoned ship on that plan right away. I'm like, let me do whatever I can to hook up, and I'm just going to run 3rd gear all the way out.
There you go. Okay.
We did 318 feet, so which got us a 3rd place finish in the work stock class. Just, I think, maybe 3 feet behind the first place.
Oh, man.
But we were right there.
Yeah. That's a good night. That's like, man, if I would have been first in the order, who knows what would have happened.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So I was happy with it because coming out of the hole, I was like, ooh, this is not going to be a good hook. But then by the time I made it to the end of the track, I was like, you know what, I can live with that.
Yeah. Yeah, so now you're actually in the running for a company sponsored event. So for the shootout, I think there's a cooler that's given away. Maybe we'll show up with some swag or something cool. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. Are there any? Have you started to notice a reception? You've been pulling now for what, 2 years, 3 years with the company?
3 years.
3 years with the company, because I remember you used to take out the blue LB7.
Yeah,
you had a good season with that.
Yeah, that was the start of it.
And then the Ford you kind of picked up on last year. What is the community like? What is the culture like when you're at one of these pulls?
Yeah, you can definitely tell it's definitely a community-driven sport because you definitely recognize the same faces at most of these events. Even some of the ones like the first year when we did a lot with the LB7, and we were going down to Mendota, Pontiac, Paw Paw, and I was like, even down there, I'm seeing the same guys that I seen all the way up in Woodstock.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely like a culture thing, I feel like, and the more you're around, the more people start to like, hey, what's going on? You know, what are you running? And yeah, it's definitely at first like I could see a new guy coming in being a little intimidated because nobody's gonna really go out of their way to be like, oh hey, I'm this guy.
Right.
But if you kind of just like work your way into the groups, people are super friendly. Like if you need weights, you need wrenches, air compressor, everyone's always more than willing to help you out.
It is always very much like that where everybody wants to help. There's really not a ton of like, oh, I can't give anybody advice or things like that. There are guys, as you get up into some of the bigger classes, who maybe are a little bit more competitive, a little bit more close to the chest with some of their details about their truck. But generally, to be helpful, everybody wants to get in. And now you being in the only emissions-equipped truck that's pulling in this league at all.
Yeah.
In fact, last year, I believe we put out the shootout. I offered $1,000 to the emissions-equipped winner. And nobody took us up on it. So
yeah, we got one other emissions-equipped truck by accident.
Yeah.
I just happened to be there. I was like, I want to see if I can truck it. They're like, well, do you know about the bounty? He's like, what bounty? I'm like, well, you kind of missed out at this point, but there was one.
Yeah. So you're the only emissions-equipped truck out there. Have you had guys giving you a hard time about the truck? What's the reception been like for the truck at the events?
Actually, the reception's been overwhelmingly positive. It seems to be creating a lot of buzz around it. Like people are like, "Wow, really? The thing still got the emissions on it, and you're out here with it? What are you doing?" Like I think the stigma around the emissions is like you go on a drag strip or you hook up to a sled and do something like this, your emission's going to melt down and you're going to have issues. Which, it has not been the case with our truck.
Well, they do put a GPS tracking device into your DPF, so that way the EPA knows if you're at a sled pull or a drag race, and they can explode it with a remote.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how emissions works.
That's why we left them on.
Right? Yeah. It is interesting looking at this where now that you got that 3-year mark into the work stock class, this is generally when guys start to think about building a bigger and badder truck. I know Nick has that UCC build down there, the big black Cummins.
Oh yeah, and I've been poking.
Any eyeballs on that? You think we're going to get it out this year?
I think I might have them. Before it was no. Now it's like you get the little head nod.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's thinking about it, and I was like, I know we can't really run it in too many places. I'm like, what do you think about Paw Paw? Because the end of Paw Paw, you're literally going into a bean field. So
right.
Worst
and that's
case
the last
scenario,
pull of the season, if I remember correctly.
That's the season ender for Labor Day weekend.
Yep.
And he's like, maybe. And I adjusted the linkage for him on the transmission, and he was playing with it out in the parking lot. And I seen the smile on his face when he lit the chargers. And I was like, oh, I think I can get him.
So that poor truck has had a hard life. It took about a year to build. About 2 days on a dyno to window the block. Took another year to get the engine back. Took another 3 to 6 months to get the engine in it. Took another year of collecting dust. Pulled one time at Paw Paw, I believe. Yeah. Dropped the transfer case and the trans right out from under the truck. And then some parts got sold off of it, I think, when it was sitting.
Yeah.
And then now it's back. It's running. It is. You hear a lot of guys with like a VVT or an LML or an L5P, and they talk about like the jet sound.
Yeah.
Not even fucking close.
Yeah,
like
I don't think you hear your turbo after you heard that truck.
Triple S500s on an 8.9 liter is just It's absolutely fucking insane is what it is.
Have you ever been close to an airport and had like a plane take off over you? It's about as close as you can get to that.
I love it. Well, I'm excited. I would love to see that truck back out on the track, see it doing something cool. For you, what about you? If you don't get to get out in the UCC truck, would you like to get into it to a higher class? What would be the class you would want to pull with if you could pull with any of them?
I mean, if I had unlimited budget, probably like the 6,500 guys or something, because that looks like a lot of fun. But I mean, realistically, the next step would be Hot Street.
Yeah, Hot Street. What's different about the Hot Street class than the work stock?
I believe it's a larger turbo size that they're allowed, but then it's an actually ISP sanctioned class. So all the safety rules income. You need drive shaft loops. I think you need the bag around your trans. A couple other things. I think you need a roll cage also. I'd have to look at the rules. I'm not fully versed on it, but yeah, it's definitely like it's pretty close to stock, but it's like that step above.
Yeah. The work stock class isn't actually an ISP sanctioned class. It's something that ISP does for the venue to offer a work stock class. It's a great recruiting tool because anybody can bring their vehicle in and pull it. There's no tech.
No.
There's no points. You're not running for a season. It's one pull, then the next pull, then the next, and next, and next. So it's really cool in that aspect. And we do get a lot of guys who show up to all of the pulls. And they always pull in work stock. But eventually, people generally want to build up to the next class, and that Hot Street or Outlaw class, they've called it different things, different places. That Hot Street class is pretty cool because you're able to kind of up your game. You're into a higher horsepower vehicle. You're actually starting to do something with making real power and getting really competitive because now you do have a points race. You do have, payouts at the end of the season and things like that. So it's a real class. And you still have a somewhat streetable truck most of the time.
And so now you're riding that line of like a fully purpose-built pull truck to like a daily driver kind of. Well, not daily driver, but like your weekend truck.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good way to put it. Well, hey, I'm excited. I know sled pull season. We're coming up to a wrap up on it here sooner than later. So I'm just glad to see that we're getting out there. Listeners, if you've been thinking about sled pulling, get over to your local county fair, get over to your local brush pull, jump online, find out where the nearest sled pull is. Go check it out. It's definitely a lot of fun, even from somebody like me who always laughs about, it's the most fun you're going to have under 30 miles an hour. It still is a lot of fucking fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even Jake just did his first hook ever the other day, and you could see the smile on his face. And I've told him, I'm like, man, you're never going to feel another adrenaline rush just going 300 feet down a track at, like you said, 20, 25 miles an hour. It's definitely a rush.
That's awesome. Well, Jaden, thank you for coming and joining us today. Thank you to our sponsors. Guys, we'll be back next week talking about more stuff around diesel performance. For today, this has been Paul Wilson.
And I'm Jaden McKinley.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us today, guys. This has been Paul Wilson.
And Chris Emke.
Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon. You got a pretty good potential at mowing over some kids or some grandmas.